If you're considering an ultra-luxury cruise, these are the 4 key lines you should be considering: Seabourn, Silversea, Regent Seven Seas and Crystal. But as you'll be spending at least $1,500 a day per cabin, you expect near perfection, yet each line shines in different ways, and sometimes, as you'll hear, they stumble too. I'm Gary Bembridge, and I've been back on all these lines in the last year to see who deserves the crown because they're top of the ultra-luxury game right now and who's falling short and why. I'll be putting these 4 head-to-head on fleets, inclusions, cabins, dining, service, entertainment and itineraries to help you see which delivers a top-notch experience and which you may want to avoid, and importantly, who they're best for. But first, what is ultra-luxury cruising and what do they all have in common? Ultra-luxury cruising sits at the very top end of the cruising market above resort mass, premium and the small ship luxury category, and they're so exclusive they carry under 2% of all cruise passengers per year. They're designed for travelers who want 5-star personalized service, no lines and crowds on board, and desire small ships that can go to ports and places that larger ships cannot, like being able to dock, for example, in the heart of cities like Shanghai, while bigger ships are some hours out in a commercial container port. Even the largest ultra-luxury ships only carry around 800 guests. Most carry much fewer and all have high crew-to-passenger ratio, a boutique hotel feel, and none of the bigger ship resort type activities. The ship sizes while lines like Explore Journeys with 922 passengers, Viking with 930 and Oceania with 1,200 are not in the ultra-luxury category. They're in the small ship luxury category. Ultra-luxury lines also have more all-inclusive fares than any of the other cruise categories, although they do have several extra charge add-ons, but their fares include food, including for most specialty dining venues too, accommodation of course, all drinks including wines and spirits, gratuities and Wi-Fi that to get streaming requires added charge packages. Regent is the most all-inclusive line as they include unlimited excursions, and some fares and cabin grades include flights, transfers and pre-stay hotels, while these are add-on charges for the other lines. They all claim all-suite accommodation and most have a balcony, although I argue that most cabins are not true suites with different rooms, and they're more kind of oversized balcony cabins, admittedly with a seating, dining and a bedroom area. Guests, because the price are affluent, they tend to be well traveled, they want comfort, convenient and of course status. These 4 lines are all owned by corporations, by the way: Silversea by the Royal Caribbean Group, Seabourn by Carnival Corporation, Regent Seven Seas by Norwegian Group, and Crystal by Abercrombie & Kent, which is part of Manfredi Lefebvre Davidio's heritage group, whose family originally created Silversea. I'm going to explore how they differ on fleet, fares, cabins, dining, itineraries, and importantly, who each one is specifically best for. But let's start with an overview of what each of these lines is best known for and, broadly speaking, what they fall short on. Silversea carries the most passengers as it has the largest fleet, 12 ships, covering both classic and expedition cruising. They're best known for having the widest range of itineraries, butlers in every grade, and their SALT program, Sea and Land Taste, which is designed to give passengers the most immersive regional dining and drink experiences of all the lines, with a SALT restaurant, bar, cooking classes and excursions. On the downside, with a wide range of ships of different sizes, classes and ages stretching back 25 years, it's a less consistent experience based on which ship class you travel on. Seabourn is best known for being the first small ship ultra-luxury line, with ships heavily inspired by private yachts and very yacht-like decor. They're increasingly well known for also offering expedition cruising with 2 custom-built ships. They're probably well known for their signature events and partnerships, things like the Marina Day when the back of the ship opens, the caviar in the surf, evening at Ephesus, shopping with the chef, and then partnerships with people like Tim Rice for entertainment, Molton Brown for toiletries, and Dr. Andrew Wheel for wellness and fitness. Probably the biggest downside is the ongoing speculation about its future, because they've been selling ships and reducing capacity and therefore itineraries, and they actually have no new builds planned. Regent Seven Seas is probably best known for being the most inclusive of the ultra-luxury lines and has a reputation of having the biggest suites. Of all of these lines, they tend to appeal to a more traditional cruising clientele. They have a wide range of itineraries on the more classic, perhaps less adventurous side than some of the others. Crystal is best known these days as having come back from collapse after being revived in 2022 under Abercrombie and Kent, but they're also known for their incredible service, with most of the crew having returned to the line, and their very strong dining, including the only Nobu restaurants at sea and a really big emphasis on enrichment. Probably the downside, they're still rebuilding trust and consistency after the shutdown, and their two current ships, despite upgrades, are the oldest in the category. Talking of fleets, how do these differ? As mentioned, Silversea has the largest fleet with 12 ships, and I've cruised on 7 of them. In the classic fleet, they have 4 different classes. The latest being Silver Nova and Silver Ray, which are very modern and unlike anything in ultra luxury, with a unique asymmetrical design which includes features like the pool is on one side and not centered. They then have other groups of ships which are Silver Dawn, Silver Moon and Silver Muse. Then they have much older ships with Spirit, and then Shadow and Whisper, all with varying passenger numbers. In Expedition they have 4 ships which are very different in type: Silver Cloud, Endeavour and Wind in the polar regions, and in the Galapagos Origin. As I mentioned, there is some inconsistency as you move around the different ships in the fleet because they are quite different. Seabourn have a small fleet which is reducing to just 5, 2 of which are Expedition. All carry no more than 600 guests. I've cruised on 4 of their ships. Their most recent classic ships are Seabourn Encore and Ovation, which are pretty appealing, and the 2 Expedition ships are excellent, and they're called Venture and Pursuit, very modern. Regent 7 Seas have 6 ships, with 1 ship navigator leaving the fleet, but it's been replaced by a much larger ship. What I like is all their ships have basically the same layout and venue, so as you move around the fleet you get a very similar experience, with just the decor slightly changing and a few modifications here and there. I've cruised on 5 of their ships, and I like getting that consistent experience as I move around the different ships in the fleet. Crystal has 2 older style ships, Serenity and Symphony, both of which I've cruised on, and they've actually been significantly refurbished and the capacity reduced since being taken over by Abercrombie and Kent. But they do have 3 new builds coming from 2028. The 2 existing ships, as I mentioned, had capacity cut when Abercrombie and Kent bought them, and they do have some different and inconsistency amongst the cabins, with some older and some newer refurbished cabins. But based on these fleets, what differences do they have in itineraries? Although both Silversea and Seabourn have Expedition ships, I am going to focus from here on only on classic cruising. Unlike the mass resort, premium, and even the small ship luxury categories, all of these lines sell incredibly globally, and of course they cover the major regions like the Caribbean and the Mediterranean, but when they do, they call on less visited islands and ports that only smaller ships can visit, and they often call on many tender-only ports because bigger ships avoid those due to the logistics, so it does take you to more unusual places. If you're looking for the widest diversity of itineraries, Silversea, I think, is best. Seabourn, though, have a surprisingly good global coverage, even with their limited fleet, but they do tend to focus a little bit more on iconic ports of the world, while Silversea can offer just much more diversity due to the different ship classes and number of ships. Regent has a smaller global footprint. It tends to focus also very much on iconic ports, but generally with slightly longer itineraries, with regions like Alaska, Caribbean, Mediterranean, Japan, Asia, Australia, and New Zealand being their key focus. Crystal, despite having a rather small fleet, do cover a lot of the world, but they do that by not home porting ships in any region, and they sail many more one-way routes with fewer repeat itineraries to offer loyalists new routes and ports. But once on board, what is dining like, and are there big differences? Yes, more than you may expect. Of course, the focus is on elevated dining, with all having at least 5 venues included in the fare, but I want to get one big miss for me out of the way before I explore the upsides. Ultra luxury lines all assume their passengers do not want a buffet, casual dining option for dinner. None of those offer it, requiring guests not wanting a multi-course served dinner to use room service, or in the case of Silversea, they do have a pizza option on most of the fleet called Spacca Napoli. While all lines offer an intimate and exclusive added charge chef table tasting venue, Silversea is the only one of the lines that have added charge specialty restaurants, which for the fares and all-inclusive positioning of ultra luxury seems a little bit off to me. So for example, on my recent Silver Nova cruise, it was $80 per person in the Asian kaiseki for dinner, though the lunch was included in the fare, and well over $100 in the La Dame French restaurant. But beyond that, Silversea does have a choice of 5 included dining venues and 1 cafe. For example, on Silver Nova, that was Atlantide main dining room, Salt restaurant with regional focused dishes, La Terrazza, which is a buffet breakfast and lunch, an Italian waiter-served dinner, the Grill Marquis, featuring their signature hot rocks for dinner, Silvernote jazz and music dining, and the Arts Cafe. However, the venues and number do vary based on which ship, so you kind of have to check based on which one you're going on. Overall food on Silversea, while good, I do feel falls kind of midway in the category, and beyond the uniqueness of Salt, it lacks for me some of the finesse and range of some of the others. For me, Seabourn also has good luxury food, but I actually rate it as the weakest of the 4 based on my experience. Now, all dining is included in the fare, and Seabourn, Ovation and Encore, like Silversea, have 5 included dining venues and 1 cafe. These are the restaurant, the main dining room, the Culinary, which is a buffet breakfast and lunch, and a waiter-served dinner with a kind of an American classic focused menu. Solace, which replaced the popular Thomas Keller restaurant and is Mediterranean inspired. Earth and Ocean on the pool deck with seasonal menus, which they bill as eclectic flavors of the world. They have sushi, a small venue, but really good sushi, and bento box lunches. And then they have the iconic Seabourn Square, which is a coffee shop cafe, but also you have guest services and shore excursions integrated. Regent has extremely good food and menus, and I rate them as the 2nd best in the category. All ships have the same venues. There are 6 dining venues and 1 cafe, all included in the fare. There's Compass Rose, the main dining room with a vast menu. La Veranda, which is buffet for breakfast and lunch, and dinner becomes Sette Mari, a waiter-served Italian. They have a pool grill, the Prime 7 Steakhouse, Pacific Rim Asian Fusion, and Chartreuse, French, and my least favorite, but it has amazing petit four carte at the end. And then there's the Coffee Connections Cafe. I rate Crystal as having the most elevated and elegant food. And again, there's 6 included in the fare venues. There's a waterside restaurant, main dining room, marketplace buffet for breakfast and lunch, Trident Grill for daytime casual dining, Nobu's Umi Uma, the only Nobu restaurant with amazing Asian and sushi, Osteria del Video, Italian and beef bar, a street food restaurant inspired by a chain which has its origins in Monaco. Then there's the Bistro Cafe. Food and dining across all these lines is high-end, and I know some will disagree with my assessment of the rankings, but perhaps not with my assessment of the service differences. Of course, with almost 1-to-1 crew to passenger ratio, service levels across all ultra luxury lines is high, with smaller ships also meaning the crew can usually get to know your name and preferences too. Saying that, I find Silversea service is probably a little bit more formal and more European versus the other lines. And with a larger fleet and the recent expansion, it's also a little bit less consistent, I find anyway, across all the crew. For example, as every cabin has a butler, reports of how proactive and efficient they are varies. I've never had any issues, but friends on recent trips have. Also, of all the lines, that sense of more formality, I think, shows up in the greater emphasis on dress code, where both passengers and the line tend to look at people dressing up more than on the other lines, with jackets required on some evenings. Seabourn service is definitely more relaxed, it's more informal, it's more casual American style, though in my experience, it's also the line where staff seem to be expected and learn names and preferences the quickest. That sense of crew interacting with guests and informality shows up with crew hosting dinner tables more than any other lines in my experience too. Regent service is also friendly, and although it has a more American style, it's a little bit less effusive and more reserved, in line perhaps with the more traditional guests that they tend to attract. Crystal is famed for having the best service at sea, helped by a very long-serving crew who've worked together over many years. And I do find it is the most attentive and personal service, definitely helped by being a tight-knit family, because crew, they know each other so well. There's only 2 ships. They work together for many years. And of course, on the other lines, there's lots of ships, there's lots of crew who move around, and they don't know each other as well. And they don't work as a tight-knit team as they do on Crystal. But what about entertainment? Entertainment on these ultra-luxury lines is limited and have few entertainment staff compared to the other cruise line categories. In my view, there is little difference between the lines, and I don't feel there is a standout, nor do I think that entertainment would or should be a real deciding factor when choosing between these lines. All have live music in the evenings, they have theatre shows which are classic themed song and dance shows, they have the standard guest entertainers, they have guest speakers, bridge classes, and the usual cruise activities like cooking, demos, bingo, trivia, and the occasional party nights. Regent and Silversea have cooking classes. Crystal are the only ones with kids club venues with programs run in major school vacation times, but they're all pretty much the same. So although entertainment is so similar, based on everything else, I do though think that different lines are right for different types of travelers who are seeking ultra luxury cruising. For example, Silversea is ideal for those wanting more choice of innovative, wide-ranging itineraries, with the added variety of being able to have slightly different Silversea experiences by trying and moving between the different classes of ships each time. They're also definitely best for people wanting more culinary immersion into the region because of that SALT program. Seabourn, for me, is a good fit for those seeking an intimate but much more relaxed ultra-luxury yacht-like experience and who want to see the most iconic must-see ports. While Regent is for those who want the most all-inclusive experience, they definitely suit travelers who enjoy probably a slightly more traditional, classic luxury way of traveling and definitely enjoy longer voyages in the must-see and popular parts of the world. Crystal is definitely for those who want really high levels of personalized service, they want really fine dining, and they're drawn to more classic, older style ships. If ultra luxury is not for you and you're more interested in premium cruising after all this, join me over in this video where I dive into the biggest premium cruise lines and find out which of them is best, which of them is worse, and why. See you over there.